those Sunday drives. And this came about because for many years I was in a relationship with a man who had grown up in New Orleans, and every time we drove anywhere he would always say, "That's where the Browns used to live, and you know, there used to be a bank on that corner," and all that kind of stuff. And I used to always think, "So what?" And then, you know, after Katrina, when things, you know, disappeared and closed and you didn't know, you know, they were coming back, all of a sudden I got it. This is those Sunday drives. You used to bore me with your monologues on drives through old New Orleans neighborhoods, what family had what house when you were young, and where some candy store or bank had stood. Who cares about the past, I used to think. We Yankee Irish pulled up roots a lot, escaping relatives with chicken coops and cabbage boiling in a kitchen pot. But that was all before the hurricane our Mason-Dixon love did not survive. Small loss indeed.
I started writing from the time I was about 7 years old. As soon as I knew how to print, you know, with a pencil, really, I started writing little poems and things. And I guess I wrote throughout junior high school and high school, but, you know, sort of secretively, afraid that somebody else, you know, would discover my poems. And when I got to college, I had the good fortune to go to Cornell University in upstate New York, and there was a very large poetry community there at the time. A.R. Ammons was a professor there, Bill Matthews, William Matthews was there, Bob Morgan, and there was a very big community of students who wrote and who had weekly poetry readings and, you know, kind of hung out together, and visiting writers. So it was a, you know, really, really nurturing environment for someone interested in poetry. And I started, once I was there, you know, reading my poems at little weekly get-togethers and taking workshops. And from there, I went on. After that, I won. Back then, Mademoiselle magazine used to have competitions for writers, for fiction writers and poets, and I won their poetry contest when I was a junior, and it was judged by Anne Sexton, who was my idol as a poet, and James Merrill. So I got up the nerve to apply to Boston University for grad school, where Anne Sexton was teaching, and went there for my master's in creative writing. Anne Sexton unfortunately died, you know, while I was there, but she's what got me there, and I really cherish the opportunity to have studied with her. And then I spent a year after that as writer in residence at Phillips Exeter Academy, a little prep school in New Hampshire, and I was, you know, publishing in little magazines and things, and got married to a man from Louisiana and moved down to Louisiana. And from then on, I worked as a technical writer for many years, but always caring deeply about poetry, writing my poems, you know, trying to seek out other writers, go to readings, and, you know, publish a little bit.
I'll start with one of the childhood ones. This is maraschino cherries. 3 little girls on the morning after, out in the kitchen poking around for cherries soaked in whiskey like a bomb of grown-up secrets. Other times we found by mom's clipped earrings and kicked-off shoes, blue glass monkeys on swizzle sticks, doll-sized oriental parasols, cocktail napkins with jokes we didn't get, cherries as precious as Burmese rubies. Once in a while the grown-ups slept, we ate our fill of cherries from the jar, but even then we liked the booze ones best. It's for the Louisiana Bicentennial, and it starts with a little quote from John Stuart Mill. He says, "The worth of a state in the long run is the worth of the individuals composing it." 1. Louisiana. Lest we grow sentimental at the date we were admitted as the 18th state to join the Union. Don't forget the snub. They did not want us in their private club. They mocked the foreign languages we spoke. They feared we'd trust not president, but Pope. To those Americans, our precious jewel, New Orleans, was a stinking septic pool.
Oh, okay, about the poem that I read here today. I was asked to write something kind of taking it as its starting point, the Louisiana Statehood Bicentennial, and to incorporate the unique culture and history of the Lake Charles area into it. So I began by doing some research, doing some reading about the history and culture of the area. And Erica McCready of the local Arts Council, Southwest Regional Arts Council, had recommended Keegan Lejeune's book, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Leather Breeches, the wonderful book about the neutral strip and its folklore. And I also found a great article in Louisiana Life magazine from last fall by Ron Chapman, I believe his name was, and Erica wrote me a fabulous email in which she just waxed poetic about, you know, the oak trees of, of the area and how they bend with storms, but they aren't, you know, they aren't destroyed by them. And so all those things are kind of swirling around in my head, and I needed some way to pull it together in a way that was emotional to me. And I get very emotional about Louisiana because I really I love this state, you know, and only somebody who's from somewhere else, you know, who adopts it can have that, you know, love for it, because you know what it's like, you know, to be from other places. But I started thinking about how when Louisiana was up for admittance to the Union, how there was a lot of opposition to it, you know, in the U.S. Congress, and people were alarmed because foreign languages were spoken here, because many people were Catholic. You know, they were upset about the free non-white people, you know, because they didn't want to give them the vote. You know, just a horrible, racist attitudes. So, you know, all this stuff was being debated, and I found that some of the leading opposition was coming from Massachusetts, which is my birthplace. So I wound up making Massachusetts kind of the bully of the poem, the villain of the poetic sequence, because I thought about how when my own great-grandparents had emigrated from Ireland to the Boston area, you know, back just after the the Great Famine, how they had difficulty finding work as laborers, you know, because of all the, you know, Irish need apply signs. You know, they faced a lot of, you know, the Catholic Church in Foxborough, where my mother's family is from, was burned, you know, by Protestants. There was a lot of really, you know, bad stuff. So I kind of put those two things together. I guess my own personal emotional, you know, reaction to that, and my feeling about how Louisiana was treated when it was trying to get into the Union, and the sequence came out of that. You know, there are parts that deal with all of those things.
Song, and yet, when Rita struck us in '05, the news ignored us like we weren't alive. But we grow strong. Our history will teach how, like an oak tree rooted on the beach of the life-giving waters of a lake, we bend with passing storms, but never break. Thank you.